Welcome to Toffs&Toolers, a criminal Victorian adventure, your weekly podcast delving into the cruel, the unusual, the mad, the sad, and the fads of Victorian England. Your guides for this wander into our strange, solemn, somewhat sordid, and yet funnily familiar past are myself, Alex Hudson, a little urchin boy done good, Mr. Hugh, who spends his free time serenading travellers with maritime songs from the era. Say hello, Mr. Hugh.
Hello, Mr. Hugh.
And Alex Sweetman, who sounds like he's from a Victorian novel and will introduce himself whether I want him to or not.
Of course I will. Hello, everyone.
We also have a random northern rat catcher, Sean, and Duncan, our resident capitalist, who composes any scripted portions. This week, we look at garotting, a nasty business perpetuated by roaming groups of proper wrong-uns.
Or probably thuggies.
Or worse, the French. Let's set the scene. Imagine, if you will, a young maiden showing an ample amount of ankle that can only scandalise her family, approaching one of our finest able seamen, Philip Mallon. She is Catherine Burns. Not only is she alluring,
She's a proper bit of raspberry, ain't she?
but she's also a lookout.
No modern shunters here. Game on.
Here, she's acting as the front stall, while her accomplice, Timothy Donovan, approaches this fine young salt from behind, reaches out his arms and puts the hug on, squeezing the neck of this unfortunate sailor to such a degree that he's rendered incapacitated and unable to react.
He's called the Nasty Man, and his embrace, while warm, is liable to leave poor Philip poorer still, and badly bruised to boot. This pair of vicious criminals made off with all of his belongings, a little less than 2 shillings.
Oh yes, garotting is a terrible crime, and all who lay hands on another's neck to make off with their tin deserve swift, harsh punishment.
Bring back the lash to a public square near you. That's what I say.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. We're here to tell you all about this heinous crime.
To revel in the justice that was reaped on these frankly barbarous ne'er-do-wells.
And to explain exactly how to accessorize to rebuke their advances.
And to find out how French it really was.
And take a look at how the papers responded.
So, without any further ado, let's get garotting. Right, so gentlemen, thank you for attending. I do appreciate you coming here today to make sure that we can partake our knowledge and share it with the audience. However, I have to insist on some rules. The first of which is there should be no Van Dyking.
Oh, but...
Oh, blimey.
Exactly. No, just stop.
Come on, Governor.
Roll
No, that's enough.
down
No.
the barrel.
May we wave a barrel of fun.
Are we all done? There's going to be none of that
Right.
here. There's only going to be proper cant talked about around this table, all right?
Kushti.
All right. Rule number 2. We shall not be talking about Jack the Ripper.
Who?
Thank you. So this is fine. There are other shows that may do it, but quite frankly, we won't be talking about anybody associated with that individual or any thoughts that may have occurred around him. There's plenty more to discuss in this particular era that doesn't involve Mr. Jack the Ripper. The third rule is more of a general guidance note is, as I'm sure you're aware, Mr. Hugh, is that Dickens is everywhere at all times. He is a multi-dimensional, time-travelling freak of nature that appears to be involved with everybody's lives during the Victorian era. And I know specifically, Mr. Hugh, you will address this during your segment, What the Dickens.
This shall be proven in the next several episodes.
I thank you so much. And with that, we'll continue. Welcome to the show. Now that we've got our introductions out of the way, let's talk about garotting. First of all, what is this crime? So garotting was...
Well, that's an easy one, isn't it?
Okay, go on, Sean.
That's when you sneak up behind someone with the old piano wire and
Or cheese wire.
not cheese wire,
Yeah.
of course, yeah.
It's strangling someone from behind with an implement, surely.
Done.
Oh, close. It's not a cheese wire. I mean, grot now is what that actually means, but garotting back then just meant anything. As far as I know, it originated in Merseyside. It was a Liverpudlian term, and garotting was actually used as a general thing. When they said put the hug on, that was another sort of Merseyside piece of slang to actually sort of when you actually grab somebody. So in general terms, it just means a mugging, really. But this was such a ridiculously sensitive area during the middle of the century, the 19th century, there were two mass panics about the whole thing. One in 1850 and one in 1860. 1861 was the bigger one, fueled by a huge amount of fear of violent crime, especially in the streets of London. And everything became garrotting at that particular point. Everything that you could possibly understand in terms of violent crime became a garrotting thing.
So someone shouts at you as you're going down the street. They tried to garrot you.
Yeah, everything. There was like a pressure on the police to do something about it, to actually sort of bring this thing to order to a certain extent. So of course they started recording everything as garrotting as well. And some of the cases we'll talk about don't always come through, let's say, with that precise kind of terminology, and judges threw out certain cases. But you still risked a huge amount from this crime. But it was quite specific in terms of what it was supposed to be, when you were actually sort of being grabbed by the nasty man, as they called it. The nasty man being the person who actually put the hug on and grabbed somebody around the throat.
So it was grabbing someone, kind of strangling them, maybe with an arm, but then everything just got lumped in with it, normal beatings.
Yeah. So incapacitated, really. So when they're actually being held, and then obviously they can be stripped of their belongings, whether that's money, a handkerchief,
Pocket watch.
Yeah, exactly. Pocket watch, your iPhone of the Victorian era. Everybody wanted to grab one of those, and they were kind of quite flashy. Some of them could be like gold or more sophisticated kind of models. So yeah, very much a kind of thing.
Well, since you brought up your dazzling pocket watch, shall we sort of rehearse through a classic garrot so we know what one might be like?
Well, I don't see why not. Somebody has to be the lure.
Oh, kind sir, I seem to have twisted my ankle. Would you render me some assistance in this conveniently dark alleyway here?
All right. I can't. Does anybody believe in being?
Oh, you
like,
certainly
permanently-
do, yes.
definitely.
I do.
Oh, yeah,
I'm the
I
victim
can,
in
I can
this.
see it in your eye. Yeah, you're
Okay.
convinced.
Definitely the target.
All right. So that's a terrible amount of ankle you're showing, young lady.
And while our friend
Oh,
Mr.
God, that is a
Hudson
terrible amount of
is
ankle.
terrified and allured all in one moment, as the nasty man, I'll creep up behind him.
Wait for it. Just,
Oh, you're being the front stall.
is it called
So-
the front stall?
The front stall is the lookout.
Okay,
Yeah.
then yes, I will. Okay.
With the nod from my good accomplice here, slip my arm round his neck and put the hug on.
Oh, I've been assailed. I'm being choked now.
Now, while the nasty man has you incapacitated,
Yeah.
I'll rifle through your pockets and see if you have anything we'll be able to sell.
Oh yeah, this has been a quite dastardly turn of events for me, obviously.
And before you know it, we'll sneak off into the shadows, ne'er to be seen again, until the next victim.
Oh, and leaving me behind, obviously, choking and unable to respire properly.
There we are. I'll drop him to the ground and off we run. Such is the trade of the professional garrotter.
And if I'm lucky, I might be able to find a bobby. But you're already into the night by then.
So would the victim usually be left alive?
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't a murder. This was a mugging. So, yeah, anybody who actually sort of involved in those particular crimes just wanted to make off with the goods, as it were. So that's essentially it. But that thing, that small sort of event, this whole thing, perpetuated into actual legislation. So in 1860s, once the second wave of mass panic around garrotting happened, then you had legislation coming in. It was called the Garotting Act, and it came in 1863. It was also obviously way too late after the whole thing had actually died down, triggered by an attack on an MP, James Pilkington.
Oh, of course.
This is why people start talking about these things, isn't it? Because if it's happening to your common folk, to your toolers, no one really cares. But if it happens to someone of high renown, it could happen to anyone. All of a sudden, all the gentlemen are thinking, well, I might get garrotted as I'm walking down the street. What if I'm visiting a house which is definitely not a house of ill repute, and someone decides they want my pocket watch?
Exactly. And you take precautions. So there was a whole range of ridiculous devices designed to actually help you to it. When the police were introduced, this threat of being sort of grabbed around the throat was such they actually had stiffened collars. These were inserted
to
with
prevent
leather to
garrotting.
prevent somebody grabbing you around the throat and incapacitating you. So that was actually a real thing. But they got more and more ridiculous, so much so Punch actually started satirizing these ridiculous things like collars with huge spikes coming out of them.
They must have weighed about like half a kilogram around your neck if you've got that much metal.
Yeah. Also a bit obvious if you're sort of putting on your anti-garroting device. You're not going to the best part of London, are you?
I'm just out for an evening walk, my dear. Allow me to just put my anti-garroting collar on.
And then you're off, basically, at that particular point.
To be fair,
down the pub.
if someone sees you with an anti-grotting collar like that, they'll probably just pick an easier mark.
Well, you think, yeah. But they had all these different devices. They were like secreted knives, guns, weapons, all designed to actually stem, this supposed sort of rise in violence. And this was a response in some ways to what was actually the liberalizing of a lot of this kind of crime. So you had ticket of leave, which was the earliest form of probation system out, and of course the end of transporting. So in about the sort of 1840s, 1850s, transporting, which obviously wasn't just a nice ride into the country, it was actually being sent to Australia to do work at a penal colony.
For how long?
Yes.
Well, they didn't exactly give you a return ticket, let's say. Once you served your time, you were allowed to come back, but who was actually going to come back from that?
You weren't given a return ticket, so after 15 years, you may find yourself in Australia, just not in chains, and you may not have a job at that point because while you've been doing like servitude, penal work, it's not necessarily employment afterwards. So you'd just be like, government, the state doesn't want anything to do with you, and there you are in Australia. And it's a bit warmer than England, sure.
Oh, and the Australians decided they didn't want any more criminals after a point. So we've got enough now. We don't want any more. So the transporting sort of like fizzled out a little bit, and ticket of leave was designed to as a kind of parole system. So the Victorians genuinely believed you could change somebody, you could make them better, you could improve their lives. Once they'd done their time in jail, then they'd be sent out. And we'll talk about jails on other shows and workhouses and things, but prison time in Victorian times wasn't exactly pleasant. But they thought by going through that process, they'll be a better person. So they could let them out a bit early. This is called ticket of leave, and that's to help with overcrowding and all these kinds of things. However, it wasn't popular. So as soon as you had the garrotting panic come around, people were demanding.
Obviously, it's the people that would have been sent away. Why are they still on the streets?
Exactly. And bringing back corporal punishment. Corporal punishment was eliminated as well over this time. So they said, bring back the lash, the cat o' nine tails.
Oh,
which was pretty brutal.
It's a horrible thing. For those that don't know, it's a whip that rather than having a single end, it's got 9 barbs on the end. So for every strike of it, you would end up with up to 9 deep gashes across your back or legs or wherever they decide they're going to strike you.
That's a very specific piece of knowledge you're aware of there, Alex. Let's not ask any more questions on that area. So but you're right. It was used on ships. So cat o' nine tails is famously being used as a disciplinary thing on ships, but it was like, we'll try it out on the general public.
Isn't that where the phrase "not enough room to swing a cat" comes from?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It wasn't an actual cat sort of meowing its way around. It was the cat o' nine tails they were talking about. So you didn't have enough room to swing a cat. It's like, I can't whip my people here and go outside in the fresh air and whip them. We got plenty of room. So you had all those kinds of things going on. And the reaction was, or the belief was, that the punishment was too lenient. So what were you going to do about all these different things? And you had to reintroduce corporal punishment. You had to reintroduce transporting. You had to reintroduce longer sentences.
Reintroducing transporting?
It didn't happen.
Gold in Australia was
that was the other
starting
thing.
To be a thing.
Yeah, it said, please transport me. Please transport me. Please send me.
It's not much of a deterrent if, we're going to send you away, but at the end of it, you might end up quite rich.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they'd have much access to the gold itself.
It's true.
But, they all go there to make their fortunes. So that, in a sense, is garrotting. So what I'd like to do, gentlemen, is take a quick break. And when we come back, we will, of course, be discovering what the Dickens is happening from yourself, Mr. Hugh. Any clues on who the Dickens is going to be this week?
Our Dickens today is another famous author, certainly one you wouldn't want to invite over to your house.
Okay, that sounds slightly intriguing. And of course, we found out our resident northerner has another job. So, dare I ask what you're actually going to be telling us about this week?
This week I'm a rat catcher.
Oh,
Okay.
appropriate.
All right. With, I hope nobody's squeamish, we were talking about rat catchers and unwanted guests after this quick word. We'll be right back.
Jeffords,
Yes, sir.
this Saturday's soiree cannot be a flop. Like heavens above, Jeffords. I'm not the Marquis of Bute. A pineapple. I could no more afford the Empire of Brazil itself than a pineapple. If you must presume to think, you must first be capable of it.
If you are an upwardly mobile man of good standing, then this scene will strike a chord, but no longer. There's no need to buy a pineapple to impress Lord and Lady Arden. Now you can rent them by the half day and enjoy being the envy of the Knightsbridge crowd. Perhaps a pineapple isn't to your taste. We can also source and provide persimmons, mangoes, jackfruit and medlars. If it's been seen in London, we can get it for you. Find Finnegan's finest fruits in Covent Garden. Finnegan's, elevating your events. And welcome back. We're back in the studio. And as promised, we're going to have a slight detour into what the Dickens and find out exactly what Sean is doing. Although I think we can guess from the job title. It is mentioned, though, as we sort of go into what the Dickens, this is purely to emphasize how ubiquitous Mr. Dickens was over all time, space,
Just so.
dimensions, as we've discussed previously. But also because he was a bit of a Dickens, I think it's fair to say. He treated his wife absolutely abominably, including trying to cast her off to an asylum at one particular point, and then shacking up with a younger lady who he had an affair with for years, I think it was.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So he has some less than admirable qualities. We obviously know him for his literature. So it is in honour of that we have Dickens of the Week. So, Mr. Hugh, who have we got this week as Dickens of the Week?
Our Dickens of the Week is Hans Christian Andersen, the Danish author whose connection to Dickens is as intimate as it is unfortunate. Andersen was a massive fan of Dickens, but in 1857 these great storytellers collided and it became a 5-week hostage situation disguised as a summer vacation. This all started with a rather vague and perfunctory invitation. Both prolific letter writers, they corresponded for some time, and then Dickens sent what to a Victorian should have translated as, "I do not hold you in contempt," using the words, "You must come and see me sometime." I mean, at best, this means come and have tea, come stay with me for half an hour, not to Andersen. Andersen promptly packed his trunks, showed up at Dickens's country home, announced his intention to move in for a week or two. This did not start well, and it did not continue well. The language barrier was enormous, both masters of words in their own languages, but with Christian Andersen's strange mix of Danish, German, and a smattering of broken English, he could not get his point across to Dickens or his rather confused and overwhelmed family. These poor people quickly became his carers. I mean, he had so many phobias, so many foibles. For example, each morning he wanted to make himself clean-shaven, but was too mortally afraid to pick up the razor himself. So Andersen insisted that one of the Dickens children took him down to the local village to get a professional shave every single day for 5 whole weeks. When the sons grew tired of orienting their whole life around Andersen, he simply sat down in the dirt and cried, and someone took pity on him and helped him out. This kind of behaviour escalated and escalated. When Andersen once received a negative review of his latest book, To Be or Not to Be, instead of processing this quietly to himself, he threw himself face down on the Dickens' front lawn and sobbed hysterically, refusing to come up until Dickens himself lured him back into comfort. 5 long weeks later, they finally said goodbye. Ushering Andersen into a carriage, nothing remained of him save a note on the guest room mirror. Hans Andersen slept in this room for 5 weeks, which seems to the family ages. Ghosted and begrudged in the aftermath, the whole Dickens family referred to him as the Bony Boar from then on. Andersen attempted to renew his correspondence with Dickens, but never was there a reply thereafter.
Doesn't surprise me
You
at
would
all.
have to just ghost someone after that, wouldn't you?
It's ironic that it's Dickens ghosting, considering how many ghosts appeared in his various different books. But there you go. Hans Christian Andersen, gave us a lot of fairy tales, but yeah, he does sound like a bit of a nightmare.
The letter on the mirror, though, is that a warning to other guests?
I don't know what that is.
I imagine it as everyone in that household, you can tell they're scarred.
So it's an
There's trauma there.
explanation.
We just need a way
Yeah.
of helping you understand
Or
why we
passive
are
ag-
not as other houses anymore.
Or passive-aggressive note to future guests.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Don't stay very
Yeah.
long.
5
You got
weeks. Too
5
long.
weeks. No, you're out. Speaking of trauma, Sean, so
Yes.
what job do you have this week?
So this week, I've been trying my hand at rat catching.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this a thing?
Well, there's so many rats around the city of London. They need to be dealt with in a way. And the normal way of dealing with rats is you get rat catchers who come around with a ferret and a small dog like a terrier. The ferrets will go into the rat holes, chase out the rats, at which point the terrier will snap them up, and the rat's dealt with.
Well, that sounds pretty straightforward.
It does. I don't have a terrier or a rat or a ferret, so I turned to, I think one of my idols, a man called Jack Black.
Oh, the actor who performed in
No, the rat catcher.
The Rat Catcher, Jack Black.
Yes, the rat catcher to Queen Victoria herself.
Oh,
That's pretty impressive.
Yes.
Okay.
He's so well known. He actually has a belt with metal cast rats, so you can tell that he is
Cast-
such an extraordinary rat
That's
catcher.
a bit ostentatious.
and he
very
caught all those
flamboyant.
metal rats himself.
Indeed.
Well, at least they're heavier, so you're not going as fast.
So because he is so skilled at his trade, he doesn't need traps or ferrets. No, what he does is he anoints his hands with some well-scented oils, like aniseed or thyme, something like that, which lures the rats in. He just waits outside the hole, and when the rats come out, he's got them
With his hands.
with his hands, with his bare hands.
Just like salmon fishing, but with
Indeed.
rats.
With
and-
rats.
You know,
and
and
aniseed
seed. So not
scented
at all like
hands.
salmon fishing then.
And there's quite an advantage actually in catching the live rats.
Advantage.
Do
Indeed.
go on.
So there is a bit of a trade for various degrees of prettiness of rat, let's call it, for want of a better word. The standard grey street rats, you can sell those to bars and such where they'll have bets on how many rats a terrier can snap up within a minute.
Oh,
So
Gambling.
yeah,
It's
gambling
not a great
establishments.
retirement plan for the rats.
It's not. But the good-looking ones, the albino ones, they're all white, or the white ones with hoods, not actual
hoods.
cloth
No,
hoods,
not actual-
coloured,
yeah,
coloured fur
okay.
that looks like a hood. They're becoming quite popular among the fancy folk,
The fancy folk.
So
the posh people.
A distinguished gentleman could procure a specialty
Fancy-
rat.
a fancy rat for fancy folk.
Gentlemen could, surprisingly, mainly among the women folk. Beatrix Potter actually is a famous client of his who has a pet rat called
Samuel Whiskers.
Samuel Whiskers. Yes,
Well, because named the book after
Of
the
course.
character. So she had a real rat
Yeah,
called Samuel Whiskers.
caught by Jack Black himself,
Jack Black himself
Actually,
caught that.
wow.
supposedly. Yes.
So if this is that lucrative, how much money have you made?
Well, turns out that catching rats with your bare hands is quite the skill, and while I haven't caught any actual rats, I think I've caught a few other things.
Oh. That would explain the smell, because it wasn't just aniseed, is it?
There was an undercutting something there.
Okay. So I take it we're going to leave that there, and then we'll...
I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to be raking it in like Jack Black is. I'm going to try a different occupation, methinks.
Okay. Well, we're thankful for that. We'll try to... we'll come back and find out what you're doing next week, anyway. So for now, we'll move on. We've What the Dickens out of Hans Christian Andersen, fascinating in itself. We're sorry it didn't work out with the rat catching. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go back to our main topics of discussion, and then we'll conclude the show on a high note.
Hysteria. It's a plague on our society, an epidemic bringing even the proudest of women low.
My wife were a happy woman. Then she began reading that awful Jane Eyre. Before I knew it, she were leaving the house untidy, swooning at the slightest provocation, and demonstrating hitherto unseen passions.
How awful! But what's the cause? And what can be done about it? No, it's not the Bronte sisters. Your wife suffers from hysteria, a malady intrinsically linked to the womb. There is no cure, but through the wonders of modern science, we can alleviate her symptoms, the poor unfortunate wretch. Dr. Pettymore's patented pelvic electromechanical massager stimulates blood flow through and around the womb, which will lessen fatigue, exercise undue passions, and straighten her befuddled mind. Our well-trained staff will induce a hysterical paroxysm, completely ridding her of all female hysteria in just 3 sessions.
Even after just one massage session, my wife looked much calmer. The kitchen was still not swept sufficiently, but the swooning had much reduced. After a full course of vibrational treatment, her passions are in check. She even insisted on returning regularly to prevent recurrence of her dreadful condition. Thank you, Dr. Pettymore.
Bring your wife to Dr. Pettymore's Hysteria Clinic on Harley Street today.
And welcome back to the show. Fantastic to be here. And yes, gentlemen, we'll discuss whatever it is you're doing next week. You know, I'm sure it'll be fascinating, and I can't wait to find out what the Dickens is being a Dickens in the episode. But we have to go back to Garotting before we finish. So what I thought we'd discuss is just a few cases, like actual people who are impacted by these things, if that's okay with you, gentlemen.
Yep.
Right. So I did want to mention James Pilkington simply because his attack was the one that triggered this whole moral panic in the 1860s. Now, he was assaulted at 11 a.m., so broad daylight.
He was the MP.
He was the MP, yeah. He's quite senior in his own right, but it was in broad daylight, middle of summer, in July, 17th of July, and it was 1862 the actual attack occurred. Now, he was set upon in fairly classic style, so that all the things we discussed, front stall, the nasty man, all the rest of it, and they made off with his pocket watch, and I think some money as well. They don't know what happened to him. Obviously, it was there. But can you imagine an MP being assaulted and then
definitely worrying.
It was worrying for them, and of course, it made national headlines, and that's what triggered the moral panic. If you look at the headlines and the mentions from the editorials, like the Times and so forth, absolutely skyrocketed, talking about garrotting as a thing after this particular time. So the media played an intrinsic part in actually hyping the whole activity. It wasn't helped by the fact that shortly after Pilkington was assaulted, you also had Edward Hawkins, who was your classic vulnerable victim, 80-year-old antiquarian and blameless life, you know. And because
the perfect victim.
Yeah, he was a vulnerable guy, and he was assaulted in the same way, and they made off with X amount of money. I can't remember off the top of my head how much it was, but it was the fact that he was this elderly gentleman with a respectable trade. And that's what made the difference. So you had MP, and you had somebody who was a very respected member of the community, very middle class. So it wasn't happening in East Cheap and, you know, the rookeries around the East Ends of London.
Yeah.
This was in the heart of the city. So obviously that's when people started to panic, and everything started to get classified as garrotting at that point. I know you've been looking at this as well, Alex.
I'm going to have to refer to my flashcards, but there's a huge amount of misclassification of things. Right. So I'm going to start with a lovely case from Liverpool. In fact, both my cases are from Liverpool.
We're not casting aspersions on anybody from Liverpool. This is just because we pulled randomly from the pile.
But the record keeping up in Liverpool seems to have been a lot better than other places. So that's why we've got a little bit more information. So it's a positive thing for them. So the first case, 3 perpetrators. Michael Morn, different ages, possibly related, not clear, and James Dunn. So they're between the ages of 20 and 23. They were convicted in 1868 at the Liverpool Summer Assizes of highway robbery and garrotting. Now, they violently attacked a man called James Taylor. They kicked him and threw him in a ditch, which the fact that they recorded that, I think, is just like a little bit extra. It's like, it wasn't just an assault. They threw him in a ditch afterwards.
Yeah.
But these were described as hypermasculine men. They were the epitome of intimidation and bullying, taking everything that they could
Oh,
throughout
like Victorian
their day-to-day.
criminal looks.
Exactly,
Yeah.
like the big man. Because they were caught, the courts wanted to make a big example of them. So they were given really, really stern sentences. It was 6 months imprisonment and 29 lashes apiece.
29.
29 lashes apiece. Now, there is a humane limit that the Victorians put on the cat of nine tails,
Oh, that's
which
good
is
to know.
50 lashes
Oh, well, it's well under 50.
per
Like tap.
session.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then they would give you like time to heal up and rest and get some scar tissue on. And then if you had been sentenced to more, you would then have your follow-up. But the fact that these guys were given 29 straight out the bat, rather than building up to it over several convictions, the courts wanted to make a big example of them.
Well, that ties in with the Garotting Act, because the Garotting Act came in 1863-64, and that brought back that corporal punishment. So if the attack happened in 1867, they resorted to that straight away.
Now, the other example that I have is quite different, and there's a bit less information about it because the people who were reporting it didn't want to talk to the old mutton shunters a
Right.
huge amount. So it was two gentlemen that were caught, Patrick Walsh and James Roberts, and they were charged at Liverpool Police Court. They were originally described as persons of questionable character,
Understandable.
and they were charged with garrotting John Lafferty, who was a packer, and John Bogue, a salt dealer aged somewhere between 60 and 80.
How how can it be aged somewhere between 60 and 80? How could they not know?
Well, they didn't stick around to provide a full report. It was at a house of disrepute, a disreputable house.
A disreputable
Now,
house.
these gentlemen just happened to be there. They weren't there for any specific purpose, but because they took a wrong turning down an alley and ended up
course they
in
did.
front of this house and got garroted.
But how does he not know his own age? I mean, when the police arrived or whatever, so how old are you? Somewhere between 60. I
Maybe
give
he
it
didn't
take
ask.
20 odd years.
I think
I'm not sure.
most likely they gave a statement and then left before the
Oh, so this
the
is police
bobbies
reporting.
got the
okay.
full
So
information.
did you say this gentleman was a salt packer?
Oh, he was a salt packer.
You know, salt is
It's a-
very aging on the skin.
It's a
Yeah,
preservative.
yeah.
So he could have been younger. You never know.
40, but he's had a hard
so
life.
It's hard, like rubbing salt into his skin.
This was in Albion Street, and as much as they were charged with garrotting, the actual crime was striking with the hands. Now, whether that's like closed fist punching or karate chopping or
Or a bit
something
of a slap.
like that, it doesn't sound much like the.
No. No. So you think these are representative of it's just put into this garrotting bucket?
Violent crime, classify it as garrotting and be done with it. Improves the numbers for
It
the
does,
for
yeah.
the local police, and it makes it look like they're being hard on the crime that people care about.
That reminds me. So we're talking about mischaracterization. So there was another gentleman I recall, George Nash. So he was arrested for assaulting a young lady in London.
Terrible.
Yes, and when he was brought before the court, he was found to have about his person, and they entered into the record a pair of scissors, tailor scissors, and a thimble. So that's what he assaulted this young lady with, who
How do you
fought him off
assault
because he
someone
was.
with a thimble.
Yeah, I don't know why they put that into the record. Apparently, the court had, the jury had a bit of a laugh about that whole thing. But what was quite interesting about it, he's got a very British-sounding name, but he was described as a swarthy individual. Now, we have to take care with the word swarthy because
It
it's
is an
lost.
antiquated term.
Yeah, and it generally means somebody of dark complexion or has taken it. And the Victorians used this as code for somebody who was foreign, which meant that they were disreputable and untrustworthy. And in this particular case, swarthy generally meant they were from some foreign land full of ne'er-do-wells like Italy. So generally, when you see swarthy related to that, it means that they were probably Italian, but he had a British name, so he may have adopted a British name to do that. So the reporting around it was quite interesting, but it wasn't a garrotting case. It wasn't a garrotting case at all. And George got let off with a relatively minor sentence because it was such a ridiculous case. And the young
with a
lady falls.
thimble being a
Assault
lesser
with a
crime.
thimble was not seen as like a serious case in that regard.
Surely someone must have objected to it have been recorded as garrotting in the first place.
I think they did. I think the judge used it as an example of over egging the numbers, like your cases. And it was obviously a serious assault. It was a young lady who may have fought him off, but obviously, you don't want people wandering the streets being assaulted by drunken tailors,
No.
regardless of whether or not they have a thimble about their person. But yeah, it seems to be this pattern of just putting it into this garrotting thing, so it looks like you're doing your particular job. But it's common assault when it comes down to it.
Talking about the foreign nature of it and the fact that he was described as swarthy looking, the papers did lean into the fact that it was considered an imported crime.
Garrotting, yeah.
It's not very British to walk up behind someone and grab them where they can't see you and have a chance to defend themselves.
And yet there was an epidemic of it. So yeah, there was this like weird sort of standoff by saying garrotting was definitely sort of something which happened, but there was also something foreign about it.
Yes.
It imported into this country somehow. But when it comes down to it, it's just another mugging. It's quite an efficient way of mugging somebody. So there was nothing particularly foreign about it.
No, it
was
fuels that xenophobia.
Yeah, and there was very much sort of leaning into that idea that it's not something that British people do, when in fact, while simultaneously trying to say there's an epidemic of it. It's very bizarre kind of behaviours. So have you gentlemen found any other cases that ring along those kinds of lines?
Well, first, not quite a case. I think you've been dipping into the press, dipping into court records, and I dipped into a little bit of the parliamentary records, the debates we have there. And the first place I found garrotting wasn't so much to do with this crime on the streets of Britain, on the streets of London, but what was happening on the continent, which was actually looked at with quite a high regard on the continent.
Garrotting?
Yes, they had that cheese wire garrotting, but in the judicial system. So their capital crime would be dealt with in an efficient, humane way rather than our barbarous hanging. And I think this is kind of where the word and the sort of almost the branding of the crime came from. But it's just so detached from the actual crime. It's an utterly parallel thing.
You said humane.
It's all relative.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
It's almost, it was unquestioned that the person should be killed. It's just, well, we hang them.
That's the way of
and
doing it.
Isn't hanging it rather backwards? Can't we do something?
Isn't it just a difference of the thickness of the wire?
Quite.
Well,
But,
if you were to hang someone with a garrote wire, that would be a lot more efficient.
Oh,
Quite. But if you don't want to
get
indulge
very
that one,
messy.
I
No.
have one other parliamentary
go on.
story.
Yeah.
That, more back on the cases. So one of the anxieties discussed in these records is how your classic Bobby on the beat would be there in his uniform with his stiff garrote-proof collar, as you've described, and he's very obvious and he's reassuring. No garrotting happens whilst he's there on the street corner. But as soon as he's off it, the garrotters emerge from the shadows and ply their trade. Basically, the police just felt, we can't stop garrotting because they can see us. So many, many more plainclothes bobbies were commissioned. And this didn't always result.
undercover.
Oh, yeah. So the undercover police were commissioned specifically to stop the garrotting craze that was apparently sweeping the streets. This didn't always work out well. So one case was reported to an MP who read it out in full in Parliament, describing this poor music teacher who was away late at night teaching in the Crystal Palace area, trying to get back home to Greenwich, and was followed on the street by a suspicious person he instantly thought was a garrotter. So he took to his heels and ran, but was overtaken by this gentleman, who proceeded to attack him. Our poor music teacher threatened him with a knife, threatened him with a pistol, which he didn't have, and then eventually threw down all of his money and his pocket watch and said, "Take it," and tried to run away. The man just proceeded, knocked him to the ground, restrained him. Then a load of police showed up. He thought, I'm saved. And they carted the music teacher away to jail.
So
The next day he wakes up, he's taken to the magistrate. Not a single word is said other than back to jail, 8 days without bail. So there's no details taken of the case whatsoever. 8 days later, he's released and finds out the original garrotter was an undercover policeman.
That has
looking
to be
for-
an inside job.
yeah, you think so? Trying to boost their numbers again.
Quite so. But just as you were saying, there was no cheese wire, there was no strangling. It was a mugging, plain and simple.
by a police officer chasing somebody he thought was a garrotter, and then
Oh, I don't think the music teacher was at all. He was running away from the police, which
they each thought the other was a
perhaps,
garrotter. Yes.
perhaps. But a man with an umbrella and some music, it's not necessarily.
I mean, if they're going to arrest someone with a thimble, then an umbrella is significantly more dangerous.
It's an escalation.
Yeah. I think we will come back to looking at the Bobbies, the Peelers in another episode. And their sort of incredible history from the formation and the ideas, but there's a whole other sort of set of stories there that we can get into. But I think on that particular story, we'll end today. We're looking forward to the next episode. But for now, thank you, gentlemen, all, and we'll see you next time around. Well, that was quite something. I'm not sure how I shall feel safe to pedestrianate whilst this looming menace is at large.
It's 2025, you fool.
You're ruining the immersion. While we've all learnt today about the rising predisposition towards violence in contemporary society, un-Englishness, retributive justice, which one of these onlookers may experience quite soon, the thorough modern malady of media manipulation and stylish network, you could be forgiven for retiring early to the drawing room for some quiet contemplation. But don't stay there too long, for next week we shall return to tell you how to plant, nourish, and tend to your baby farm.
That's not what that means.
What do you mean?
No.
Hang on, we got show notes, haven't we? Okay. Unwanted. Oh, okay. Well, in that case, we'll be back next week to explain how you can make a pretty penny from your neighbour's surplus children. Until then, keep your wits about you, your neck covered, and avoid dark alleys and the East End. Farewell. Toffs&Toolers, a criminal Victorian adventure, was brought to you by Dreadful Penny Productions. The cast were Mr. Alexander Hudson, Alexander Sweetman Esquire, Sean Gibson, and Mr. Hugh. The scripts were inked by Duncan Allwood, with constant interjections from the cast. The producers were Bella Gregory and Rob Morris. Production facilities were provided by the fine fellows of the Podcast Room, London. This show was first broadcast by Telegraph in 1844 by Mr. Sweetman, where he cautioned all with "What hath God wrought?" before sending. He felt it fair to provide a warning.